Today and spent time at the podium taking questions. Andy Reid on Travis Kelce's future. Zach Taylor addressing a challenging offseason ahead in Cincinnati. And Nick Sirianni talking about the idea of banning an Eagles staple, the tush push. But we start in Minnesota, where Kevin O'Connell was asked about what's next for Sam Darnold.
I've had great dialogue with Sam, from the time the season ended up until very, very recently. And I think my relationship with Sam has grown to a point where, the respect level is sky high. And this process is going to play out both short term and long term for the Minnesota Vikings. And Sam is in a position where the NFL thinks he can play quarterback at a high level. So that's a really good thing. And I feel very proud to be a part of helping him get to this point. And we'll see kind of where it goes from here.
Yeah, he was a perfect coach for Sam Darnold. That 2024 looking nothing like the rest of his career. Before joining the Vikings, Darnold won just 38% of his starts and threw almost as many interceptions as touchdowns. But last season, he won 14 games, the most by a quarterback in his first season with the team since 1950. And he averaged over a yard more per attempt and had nearly 3 times as many touchdowns as interceptions. We have the brain trust here. We got Field Yates in the house. We got Tim Hasselbeck. Mel Kiper Jr. is coming along with his mock as well. But let's start right here. Tim, what would you like to see the Vikings do at quarterback?
Well, let me start by saying I think the Vikings are going to move forward with J.J. McCarthy. I think that's what they will do. But I actually would build around Sam Darnold. Look, he's just turned 28 or about to turn 28 years old. He's a really talented player who came into the league into a bad situation. He's kind of played through some tough spots and come out on the other side. It's very difficult to do, and I think it says a lot about you as a player. And then he played at an extremely high level for the Vikings a year ago. So if you're the Vikings, you know he can do it for your organization in the environment that you've put him in. So to me, you never know on somebody that hasn't played. Like, I don't care how much you've evaluated. I don't care how promising of a prospect they are. You don't know until it actually happens. You actually have seen it with Sam Darnold. And he's not a 36-year-old quarterback. He's got plenty of time before he's even 30 years old. So what I would do is I would build around Sam Darnold. I don't believe that's the direction they will go, but that is the direction I would go.
Yeah, and Tim, I would go with J.J. McCarthy as my quarterback of the future, and I would trust the scouting that led you to move up from pick number 11 to number 10 and take him last year as the 5th quarterback off the board, but still a top 10 overall selection, and also trust in the infrastructure that led you to feel confident in Sam Darnold this past season, because coming in to last regular season, Sam Darnold had way more questions surrounding him than answers, which he provided throughout the course of much of the season, the final 2 games notwithstanding. I think J.J. McCarthy, if he was in this year's draft class, might be in contention to be the number 1 overall pick selected. But I would not entirely let go of Sam Darnold. What I would be doing is following the path the Chiefs took last year with cornerback L'Jarius Sneed, who they franchise tagged with the complete intention of finding a trade partner. It was basically just buying them extra time to eventually send him to Tennessee in a trade that's going to net Kansas City a near the top of the 3rd round pick this year. So if I'm Minnesota, the market for Sam Darnold is going to be multiple teams. I understand trades for quarterbacks can be complicated, but I would start with that franchise tag and see if you can't get some draft compensation in return. Minnesota very short on picks this year.
Yeah, that would be around a $40 million tag at this point. You mentioned J.J. McCarthy, and they went all the way up to 10 to get him last year. What he would do if he was in the draft this year, a lot, because, well, it's pretty thin at quarterback. 6 taken in the first 12 picks last year. Not nearly as many options in round 1 this year. Mel Kiper released his latest mock today, gives us top 3 picks. Let's go. Ooh, Mel, where are the quarterbacks? Start at number 3 in the Giants for us.
Let's go to Giants. I don't like quarterback. I'm going to assume it's maybe Matthew Stafford. They go a different direction and get, I think, the best player in this draft, which is Travis Hunter, cornerback, wide receiver, do-it-all performer from Colorado. That's what they need. Another weapon with Malik Neighbors. You team in with Neighbors, good luck trying to stop that offense. Cornerback as well, another neat area. The guy can play both ways, figure where he is going to be best at, sprinkle him in at the other spot in the big game or in the Super Bowl. Then you go to Cleveland. I'm thinking here, and Adam Schefter concurs, there's got to be a quarterback. You're in a division with Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow in the AFC. The Deshaun Watson trade was a disaster. Now you get Cam Ward. He can play it at Internet Word, but he played at Washington State out in Pullman. Weather conditions, obviously a factor in Cleveland, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. He can handle that. He can cut through wind. He has the arm strength to do it. He's a better fit there than Shedeur Sanders. Tennessee, again, I like Will Levis. Not going to belabor that point. A lot of people don't. I do. But, hey, they'll get another option. But here you take the best player you feel on the board. And I talked to my NFL friends, Hannah, and they feel Abdul Carter will be the guy. I have these two behind Travis Hunter. Abdul Carter this year, when he's unleashed off the edge after moving from off ball to outside, was a sack artist. They need him to be that way because that's their number one need. The number one priority for the Tennessee Titans is edge rusher. If he's one player on your board, you take him and then you figure out quarterback and hope that Will Levis maybe improves in year 3. And I saw a lot of good things from Will this past year. Some bad things, but some really good things as well.
Yeah, they've already told Will Levis to expect some competition next year. Speaking of the Titans, their new general manager, Mike Borgonzi, says the phone lines are open for anybody interested in that top pick.
It has been in the media, for sure. Anytime you have number one pick, it's always going to be a topic of conversation. I would say we've had some phone calls. Yeah, I'll keep those phone calls to the vest, but we've had some phone calls, yeah. There's a handful of players, anytime you're at the top of the draft that you would deem generational talents, and we certainly feel that way this year as well.
GM speak is just so much fun this time of year. Field, should Tennessee be in the market, though, for a quarterback at the draft?
Hannah, I think there is a fundamental difference between the Titans and some of the teams that follow them in the order, the Browns and the Giants and also the Raiders in this regard. This is a team whose timeline is not forcing them to take a quarterback right now, to the point that if they deem a different prospect worthy of that number one overall pick or find a trade partner to add additional draft capital, that would be the direction that I would go. While I'm not as confident in Will Levis as a long-term starter in the NFL or even a short-term starter in the NFL as Mel is, I think he is still young enough going into his 3rd season that you can make a credible case that you could invest in him one more time and potentially add a veteran at some point in free agency rather than forcing the issue if you are not fully and totally convicted on a quarterback to be taken number one overall, which of course would mean you're bypassing elite talents of the mold of Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter or even Mason Graham from Michigan.
Yeah, and I think you got to love the quarterback. If Tennessee loves one of these two quarterbacks, then you take that quarterback and you let him compete with Will, and you would hope that he would beat, if you're taking number one, and maybe beat him out. If he doesn't, hey, it's great because Will Levis becomes the guy. Either way, you got to get the right quarterback. So if they love one, you take them. But when talking to NFL people, it's a lot of polarizing situation with these quarterbacks. Some think they're okay. Some say they should be 3rd-round picks. Some are just down on this quarterback group in general in terms of the top part. But I think in Tennessee's case, if you love one, you take him. If you don't, you take Abdul Carter. And that seems to be the direction they may go. Obviously, this is a team, as you said, has some time on their hands. We'll see if Levis develops. If he doesn't, there's other options. There's other options in free agency, trade, that he can bring in somebody else to compete, even if they don't get a quarterback in the draft.
Yeah, and listen, they don't lay all of last season's disaster on his feet. Obviously, he couldn't take care of the football, but they didn't as a team. They had way too many penalties, a lot to clean up. Cam Ward to Cleveland, number 2 overall in Mel's mock. What do you think?
Yeah, so I just said that the Titans have some time on their side, right? They are a fresh organization in terms of experience, a second-year head coach and a first-year GM. Cleveland, not in that situation, and they have no way of getting out of the Deshaun Watson deal for not just this year, but also next. As a matter of fact, as we know, Deshaun's not going to play this season after re-tearing his Achilles not long ago. They need to add a quarterback. What other option is Cleveland going to have for a team that is desperate to get this position right? The Deshaun Watson trade is over and done with. It's a sunk cost. You can't use that as an excuse to not reinvest in the position. And it feels like for several years running, Hannah, we have talked about how the Browns roster is pretty good if they can only get that quarterback situation figured out. The same shine around that Browns roster is not there right now, but there are enough pieces in place that they must prioritize that quarterback spot, Mel.
Yeah, and again, you're picking second, right? You would hope you get a quarterback that's ranked 1 or 2 on your board. I am at 5-6. You don't have them even that high, Field, so this would be a stretch even for Cam Ward. But again, the pressure to get the quarterback position right, the pressure to keep up with Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson and all those other quarterbacks in the AFC will lead them probably to take Cam Ward and roll the dice. And hey, he can fix. And Hannah talked about Will Levis. A couple of those mistakes in those games, one mistake in each game early on, right? Cost them, right? And we always talk about that one mistake. Well, Cam Ward made some mistakes, but in college football, you can overcome that in the second half. So he's got to clean up some of that reckless, careless behavior with the football in his hands. And if he does that, he can be maybe a franchise quarterback.
Browns have already taken 4 quarterbacks in the last 20 years, the most in the NFL in that span. See, it's not just coaches that they cycle through there. It's quarterbacks also.
Quarterbacks often, yeah.
All right, back to the mock wall. It's interesting that Mel has the Giants and the Raiders both passing on a quarterback. Just want to clarify that's because our friend Mel thinks those teams are going to address that position outside of the draft. So that means that Shedeur Sanders is on the board when the Jets make their pick at number 7. And new Jets head coach Aaron Glenn was asked about the QB position today at the Combine.
Forward to it. Again, I don't want to disrespect anybody on our team by just talking about the quarterback. Obviously, quarterback is an important position, but listen, everybody on our team is important. We haven't had free agency. We haven't had the draft. Listen, Tyrod's a good player. We know that. I think he's won almost 50% of his games. So he's a guy that's been around this league for a long time. So to answer that question, it's hard to because the draft for free agents haven't came yet.
Fresh new start, new coach. Would they be better off drafting a quarterback or finding somebody in free agency?
If the board falls the way that it did in Mel's mock, Hannah, I would much prefer the drafting route for the New York Jets than some sort of veteran free agent for this reason. Other than Sam Darnold, there's not a free agent that I'm convinced can really come in and sustain winning for an organization. And obviously, Sam Darnold's not going to return to the team that drafted him 3rd overall back in 2018. The Jets do not need to try to make a quick fix this year. Another team, first-year head coach. First-year GM. They are just getting started. Now is the time to let the board come to you, if it does in this fashion, and evaluate, is Shedeur Sanders worthy of that 7th overall pick? While he would be a reach relative to my overall rankings personally, I still think he's going to go really high, and I'd much prefer this route than trying to find some Band-Aid quarterback that costs you a whole lot more money in free agency.
Yeah, Phil, just to clarify, the Jets, picking behind the Raiders I have looking at Sam Darnold. So that's going to be an option for these teams as well. That could push Shedeur maybe